Satellites. Seemingly strange, mysterious floating objects in space. Sounds like a UFO, but not quite. I want to shed some light on what satellites are and how they help us in our day-to-day lives. Let me tell you a story about how I was calling my friend from New Zealand. He's studying there for one semester. And for context, it's literally the opposite side of the world. I don't know how he's not fallen off, but that's for another day. When I was calling, it got annoying fast. Imagine 5 minutes pass, and for the past 5 minutes you've just been cutting each other off. When you speak, he starts speaking. When you try to not cut each other off, you still manage to cut each other off somehow. And it took me a while, because I'd just woken up at that time. The time zones are a huge issue as well, but it just is. That's just life, I guess. And it took me a while to realize there's potentially latency issues. Latency meaning the lag between when you say something and when they actually hear it. To test it, because it's a video call, I said, I'm going to count down from 3, and when I say go, put your hand up. So I counted down, said go, and he stood and stared at me for a second before rapidly dashing his hand up. And that was the funniest thing to me. I don't know why or what even made it funny, but I started dying out of laughter, and he was quite confused on the other side. And then I asked him, hey, I'm going to do the same thing. You count down now. And then after he counted down and he realized the gap in my reaction, we both were just laughing for the next 5 minutes. Then he put something into context for me. He mentioned how it took him 3 flights, 24 hours in total, to get from the UK to New Zealand. And yet, I'm able to talk to him with just 1 second of delay. Remarkable. And this is only possible because of satellites. This actually comes under telecommunications. Tele for the telemetry, or the data. In this case, the data would be our voice and the video. And communication means sending it across to another place. This is just one example of how satellites can be used. Let me give you another example. This one is from back when it was the first day of university. And I wasn't really sure what to do, so naturally, when there's a huge campus and you don't know where your lectures are, you use Google Maps. Now, for some reason, my phone just hated me that day. When I got it out, it stopped working. I even had Google Maps ready beforehand, so I don't waste any time between lectures. And suddenly, it just stopped working. I had no idea where to go. And I had to resort to the old-fashioned method of asking for directions. Talking to people. That's always fun. Especially when you're new and you don't know anyone. That's the best part. My quality of life had dropped instantaneously, and it basically went beneath the ground. And I also wanted to bury myself. But either way, this just goes to show how important satellites and our phones and technology in general has become. Imagine this. We use these technologies to get to places all the time. If you want to go to, say, London, well, you just put Google Maps on. If you want to travel and book flights, how does the aircraft know where to go? Once again, it uses telemetry data from satellites. This time it's in the form of GPS, which is Global Positioning System, if you don't know. Essentially, it's part of a wider global system of satellites where they share data about navigation. I think there's one in USA, there's one in Europe, Russia, India, Japan, and China. Either way, GPS, it manages to link vast distances and finds you the best routes using many clever algorithms. I won't go into the details of that, but definitely search it up. It's a fun watch. I'll also send a link below to my friend's article about GPS. It goes into the more physicsy aspects, talking about how relativity influences these calculations. But this isn't where it ends. Satellites play a much larger role. And when it comes to research, this is where things become really fun. Now, when you think about research, you think about the objective. What am I trying to get information off? This defines your payload. Payload essentially is what you send up with the satellite, and you hope that it actually helps you reach your mission objective. If you're doing wildlife conservation, you might be interested in tracking migration of animals. So, in that case, your payload would be a camera, because you need to find and detect the animals. Well, of course, you need a huge camera, because imagine sending something kilometers up into the sky and using a camera to track one tiny bird. That's a lot of work. Either way, this is called Earth observation, because, well, you're observing Earth. And it can help from all things, from wildlife to weather. And not only just that, you can also see the impacts of global warming, how ice caps are melting, and it helps you track it. This data is crucial for us because it helps us predict how things will change in the future. And it helps us make informed decisions as a society and make sure that we take a sustainable path to the future. Another example of this is up in space, actually. Think about it. There's so much debris up in space. How do you know that when you send a satellite up into orbit, that it won't just crash into a tiny piece of debris traveling at insanely fast velocities? Well, you need to be aware of the debris in the first place. This is known as space situational awareness, where you're aware of the situation of the environment. In this case, it's space. You can do this from Earth using telescopes, or you can do this up in space using other satellites. This is in fact what we did for one of our competitions at university. We worked on building a satellite where the main goal was to detect, identify, and track debris. This is much harder than you'd actually think, because when you're so close to something moving so fast, it's not in your field of vision for that long. Think about this. If you were trying to track a race car at a Grand Prix, for example, if you're sitting far away and the race cars are a good few meters away from you, well, a good few hundred meters away from you, they stay in your vision for longer. You can track them as they go by without much difficulty. Now imagine you're right up against the gates. In this scenario, before you know it, the race car has just gone by and you can't even register what the number plate was. Think about this in space now. Debris move much faster than race cars, and I can tell you one thing for sure. They're very small. You have to detect something which is moving faster and is smaller, therefore harder to detect. Now, think about how fast your shutter speed needs to be. Shutter speed in this case being the time taken to capture that race car, if we look at the analogy before. This time, it needs to be very short. But if you look at my video on cameras before, if the shutter speed is too short, we don't get much data. And we need to make up for this using highly precise CCDs. Once again, check out my video on cameras for more information. Either way, if you're interested in this new and exciting field, just let me know, and I'll happily make a video where I go on and dissect the satellite I actually worked on last year. That's all I have time for today. Thank you.